بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So it's good to be here, alhamdulillah. I know some of you may know this, but I was actually born in Georgia. Yeah, small town, or actually I don't know if it's a small town anymore. It used to be a small town called Albany. I don't know what that is. No, I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's still, that is still a small town. So it's always nice to come back to Georgia. I posted the flyer for this event on my Instagram story. And I was gonna put like, I'm gonna be in Georgia and then like a couple peach emojis. And I was like, wait a minute. Like nobody ever gives you the benefit of the doubt online. So that's gonna be interpreted from people. So if you live in Georgia, you all know, right? But if you don't live in Georgia, that could be a lot, right? That's sad not to do that. But it's always nice to be back in Georgia. So I was born in Albany and I lived there actually just like 5 or 6 months. And then we moved out of Georgia, and then in middle school, we moved back to Georgia, lived in a town called Savannah. You all know Savannah, right? Yeah, much bigger than Albany. And I lived there for a few years, and then that's it. After that, just raised in Maryland. But it's good to be here, alhamdulillah. It's good to talk about a topic like this. For the record, I didn't pick the title, Swipe Righteous. A pretty clever title, I must say. Muslim edition, so you gotta emphasize, so not only righteous, but Muslim, right? So alhamdulillah, it's a good title. I was talking to the brother earlier, I said, why did you pick this topic? He's like, okay, obviously everybody's young, people trying to get married, or they're thinking about marriage. This is the age where people, college, when you start thinking about marriage and who to marry and how to go about getting married and all that kind of stuff. So it's a big topic to cover, and I said, marriage topics are always pretty popular. There's a good friend of mine, Shaykh. He once said that there's 2 topics that people love to hear about. First is marriage. So people they'll show up to a marriage lecture. The second is jinn, right? Like jinn stuff. So if you're like, oh, we're doing a lecture on jinn stories, then I'm sure we have a podcast, right? People love hearing about the world of jinn. So Shaykh he said, you know what? We can do like one of the best seminars ever. Jinn marriages. That everybody's gonna show up, right? But yeah, so this is one of those topics that's kind of is of interest to a lot of people, and it should be. And I do want to start off, inshallah, by talking a little bit about the importance of marriage in Islam and the place of marriage in Islam. And I'm going to base it off of a few hadith and a few ayat from the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So first of all, a hadith that I'm sure many of you have heard, the half of your deen, half of your faith. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, إذا تزوج العبد فقد استكمل نصفه. That when a servant, being a servant of Allah, gets married, they have certainly استكمل نصفه. They have certainly completed half of their religion or half of their faith. فليتق الله فيما بقي. So they should have the taqwa of Allah, they should fear Allah, they should be conscious of Allah and what remains. And so this is a hadith that often gets shared, half of your deen. What does that mean? What does it mean when the Prophet ﷺ said that when a person gets married, they complete half of their deen? There's a few different ways of looking at it. Number one, our scholars tell us that if you look at protecting ourselves and from the hellfire and making sure we fulfill the purpose of our life, which is to worship Allah and attain Jannah and protect ourselves from the hellfire, then this is like almost half of the way there. This is half, it can be, I should say, it can be half of the way there. And this is based off another hadith the Prophet ﷺ mentions Muslim, in which the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man yadman li ma bayna lahyay wa ma bayna rijlay, adman lahu al-jannah." That the one who guarantees for me what is between their jaws and what is between their legs, I guarantee for them paradise. Meaning you guarantee to protect these 2 aspects of your life, and the Prophet is saying, for this person, I guarantee paradise. What is between their jaws is what's going to be the voice of look at this. Number one, our scholars say that this refers to our speech, our tongue. And that the source of how many times or what will lead a person to the hellfire or what protect us is their tongues. And this can be, the sins of the tongue, whether it be slander or backbiting or, speaking out of anger and verbal abuse and all this kind of stuff that often gets belittled. Because oftentimes we don't even subhanAllah think about how our speech is part of our deeds, right? And if you want to prove that, look at how people behave online. Right? People will say things online that they probably wouldn't say to your face, right? Because it's not even to people who are talking online and making comments and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't even feel real, right? You're behind the screen or you're behind the phone and it's very impersonal. And so even you may like someone, but my person may say something nasty about them that they never say to their face, but online they would. Because there's that lack of that personal connection. And one of the companions came to the Prophet and he was surprised when the Prophet mentioned how the tongue is one of the things that can lead a person to the hellfire. So he said, will a person's tongue take them to the hellfire? And the Prophet said, do you think people will be overturned in the hellfire except by what their tongues reach? Meaning, do you think it's other than that? That's how important and that's how serious it is, like what comes out of our mouths. And also part of that is what we consume as well, as scholars say, what goes into the, eating halal and consuming halal and all that. So that's what is between the jaws. What is between the legs, obviously we're speaking about desires, right? And so our scholars say that when a person marries or gets married, they're supposed to have taken care of that aspect of their lives. Meaning they have protected themselves from falling into haram when it comes to their, intimacy and desires and so on and so forth. So the idea is that when a person gets married, they've protected themselves. At least that half of their faith, in half of getting to Jannah, they have protected themselves. Another way of looking at this hadith of half of one's deen is that marriage is such a big responsibility, and there's so much that that marriage demands from us. That if a person gets married and they fulfill the rights of marriage and being married and being a good spouse, then they've covered half of their deen. I mean, there's so much that goes into getting married, and y'all don't know this. But once a person gets married, they realize how much of their life transforms and how much of their life is intertwined into their marital relationship. Speaking from first-hand experience, I looked at my life before I got married and after I got married, and they seemed like two different lives to me, two different lives. When I was studying in Medina and I wasn't married, subhanAllah, I used to think that I don't have a lot of time, right? There's so much to do in Medina. But after getting married, a person's responsibilities become so much more. And subhanAllah, my brother recently came to me and was like, can you give me some business advice? And for those of you who don't know, I have this very small business. It's a clothing line. I don't get much time to, invest into it. But the brother's like, oh, you're a businessman. I'm like, I don't know how successful a businessman I am, because I'm sure you all probably know. Do y'all know how a clothing line? Like 3 people know. That's how you have successful line. So I told him, I said, look, I'm not very successful, but I'll tell you this. I'll give you this advice. If you're trying to start a business, if you're trying to do anything really, and you want to just go for it, then do it before you get married. Why? Because before you get married, you can put everything on the line, right? Like you want to invest in a business, you can invest 100% of your money. And what happens? You invest in a business fails. And now you have no money, you know where to live, you have nowhere to sleep. I mean, if you're by yourself, you can sleep on the street. Because what? You just gotta take care of yourself, right? You gotta make sure you're okay and make sure you find a place to sleep at night and find some food and you gotta take care of yourself. But once you get married, you cannot take those same risks. Because now you have to think of the welfare of your spouse and your children. And so you can't just be like, you know what, all my money I'm gonna invest into this. Likewise, studying the deen, by the way, is very similar. I tell a lot of young people, like, if you're interested in studying Islam, I know people don't want to hear this, but I'm like, maybe do it before you get married. You want to do it full time, maybe, and this is not for everyone, this one's different, this is a nuanced issue, but the way a person can commit before they get married is very different than how they can commit to something, whether it's studying the deen or a project or a business, like whatever it may be. Like you can't do that in the same manner, in the same way, or to the same degree once the person gets married, because now you're responsible for other people. And the rights that are involved there, it becomes very, very difficult. So the idea here is once again that when a person gets married, there's so much that goes into being married life, that it can cover half of their faith. That if a person's power is a good spouse, a good husband, and a good wife, or a good mother, and a good father, whatever it is, all the stuff that goes into being married. Not only that, by the way, not only a good husband or good wife, but to be a good husband and a good wife, and also be a good son or daughter, and also be a good son-in-law and a daughter-in-law, and also be a good father to your children. Life gets complicated, right? So all of that goes into a relationship. All of that is one of the reasons why Hassan said that a person who gets married, they are fulfilling half of their. It's like half a big chunk of their faith that that they will be able to, inshallah, fulfill. So that's number one. And by the way, if you think I'm here to scare you from getting married, that's not why I'm here. Well, that's kind of a little bit of why I'm here, but not completely, right? But I want to make this issue real for you. So I come from a generation, I come from a time, and I was thinking about how personal to get it, because and I really I do have to get a little bit personal. Because marriage and relationships, these are serious issues, and we need to get real about this issue. So I came from a time, subhanAllah, when I accepted Islam and I started practicing Islam, it was a time period where a lot of the du'at, a lot of the speakers, especially in the West, they were telling young Muslims, like, look, you gotta get married ASAP. Right? Why? Because there's so much fitna, there's temptation in society, and so on and so forth. And a lot of young brothers and sisters got married very young. Right? So that's the time I come from. But now, or even like about a decade after that, we saw one of the outcomes of that. And one of the outcomes was that a lot of people got married when they weren't ready to be married. They didn't even know, subhanAllah, the rights of a spouse. They didn't even know the basic, subhanAllah, the rulings that are involved, the ahkam that are involved in getting married. They didn't know, subhanAllah, anything about relationships. And so people went into marriages unequipped. And one of the outcomes of that was that a lot of people got divorced. And so we took about 5-10 years, but after that time where everybody was like, get married, get married, get married, get married young, get married young, we saw the outcome of that, and a lot of people also got divorced. However, we're in a time now where I see the pendulum is kind of swung in the other direction. And I was one of those people who 10 years ago, I was telling people, like, listen, you gotta calm down, right? Like, I know you want to get married ASAP. I know you're like, oh, there's trials, there's temptation, so on and so forth. Like, I can't do it. Like, I can't function in this society. Like, I gotta get married. But listen, you gotta prepare yourself to get married. Give yourself a little bit of time. First, find out who you are before you bring somebody else into the situation. Like, a lot of times people don't understand who they are or what they want in life, and they want to bring somebody else into that situation, and it can be chaotic. And so I'm like, listen, you need to grow as a human being, as an adult, and very importantly, as a Muslim, before you bring somebody else into this whole equation, and then let alone when kids get involved and things get even more complicated. And so I was part of that those few percentages, and y'all need to relax. But what seems to happen now is that now people have also gone in the other direction. Or people listen, there's no rush to get married. Take your time, figure out who you are, graduate college, get a job, find yourself, what is it, eat, love, and pray, or whatever. Go travel the world and find yourself, and then get married. Well, that's also led to a problem. And the problem is that people, subhanAllah, have formed their life and their lifestyle to such a degree that it has no room to accommodate others. So a person's, and I don't want to mention ages here, but a person at a certain age where they're like, listen, this is me, these are my habits, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, and at a certain point in the person's life, it's like, there's no way to change that. So when you bring somebody else into that relationship, so when two people get married, I would say like it's like two worlds crashing together, right? You have your world and everything from from the very beginning, your culture, your parents, your lifestyle, your past experiences, your baggage, everything that you've been through, all of your whole world. And then you take another person and they have all the stuff that they've been through and they're going through and all the stuff that they're dealing with and they're complicated, messy, and then crash them together. And it's like, yo, let's make it work. Right? Two worlds colliding together. It's difficult. It's hard, right? And so subhanAllah, what can happen, what has happened or seems to be happening now is that we're kind of swinging in the direction we're telling everybody just wait until you are fully ready to be married, which that can be relative. And that's why today I want to speak a little bit about what does it mean to be ready to be married. But that can be relative. A person can go years and years and years and still feel like I'm not ready. And the vast majority of people, like you can prepare for marriage, but you're never truly gonna feel ready for marriage. Right? Because it's not something you experience, you don't know what you're getting into. It is two worlds crashing together. And so the reason I say this is that obviously the sweet spot is finding a balance. Right? So we don't want to delay marriage for no reason, right? If you don't want to delay marriage until like I said, I found myself and I know myself and I'm mature enough to the point where a person has no room to kind of accommodate someone else into their life. And at the same time, I still believe it is very important that we don't rush marriage. Especially on this age right here, subhanAllah, like I said, there's a lot that you're learning, you're still maturing, there's still things that you're going through in life. Even if you take a look at one slice of your life, and you can take a look at your life in different slices, right? So there's like your spiritual life and your social life and your family life and so on and so forth. But just take a look at one slice of that aspect of our lives. If you take a look at your spiritual life, your faith, your deen, Islam, I can pretty much say with a lot of confidence, for those of you who are probably like juniors or seniors, your faith probably looks pretty different than what it looked when you got to college. Because college tends to transform people. Especially like you got good at MSA, so like y'all have good at MSA, inshallah. But you meet people in MSA and maybe some people, they haven't attended an Islamic lecture in their life. But they get to college and that's a good college and there's a lot of programs going on and like you're able to spend time with the Muslims and learn your faith and people grow in your faith. And so subhanAllah, even in these few years, you've changed so much. And imagine subhanAllah, somebody gets married in their first year of college, where they don't really care much about their deen or they're not that connected to their deen. Versus, when somebody's graduating, they're feeling the gravity, becoming like an adult, having to provide, and so on and so forth. They start to really think about the purpose of their life and they start connecting with their faith. Their faith may be a lot more important to them now than it was 4 years ago. And so subhanAllah, this person now has matured in their spirituality. And so when this person is going to look for a spouse, they're going to say, look, this is where I am. I need somebody compatible with me. I need somebody who's going to work with me. I need somebody I'm going to be able to work with. Because if we're on two very different levels when it comes to our deen, then that's just another challenge that's being added to relationships. All relationships have challenges. Like I said, two worlds colliding together, there's always going to be challenges. The very fact that it's two separate human beings, there's going to be challenges. And we're all different. I don't know, people often say like, you should marry your own culture or race, and this is not because it's more familiar. Even if you marry the most familiar person, the fact that somebody grew up in a different household means they have their own culture. Even two siblings who grew up in the same house can have drastically different personalities, right? So yeah, marriage is it's already going to be difficult. But we have to be careful. Number one, are we ready for the challenge? Are we prepared for the challenges? And are we ready to take them into account as something that we need to work on to make this relationship successful? So once again, if you were to ask me, where is that line? How do I know? I can't answer that for you. Because the reality is I don't know you as an individual. And that's why questions like these, they're for me, impossible to answer in a general way. Because every single person sitting here today, if you would say, do you think I should get married right now? Or do you think I should wait a couple years? Or what is the question I get all the time? What's the right age to get married? The answer is, I don't know. Because I don't know you. I don't know what you've been through. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know where you are in terms of your faith, in terms of your maturity, in terms of your career, in terms of everything else that you need to be able to get married. You know, when we talk about ability, the Prophet actually specifically, when it came to getting married, he specifically mentioned ability. So someone who isn't able to get married actually could not get married. Right? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, يا معشر الشباب من استطاع منكم الباءة فليتزوج. He said, oh, young people, whoever amongst you is able to get married should get married. Right? One of the interpretations of this is that they can afford to get married. Right? If you can afford it, meaning if you are have that, if you have that ability, you know, the financial ability, because sometimes it's as simple as that. Does the person, do they have the ability to support a family? Do they have the ability to support you know, kids? Because kids become a reality. It's very, even if you person goes, I'm not planning on having kids, well, Allah can decide for you, no matter what. And so when a person goes into a marriage, that's the responsibility that they take on, that they prepare themselves, you know, it's going to be a reality for me. Am I ready for that? So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam specifically mentioned this as an ability, that whoever is able to get married should get married. And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَعَلَيْهِ بِالصَّوْمِ. When the person was not able to, then they should fast, because that fasting is a protection from them, protection for them. That whatever temptation or trial the person is experiencing, that fasting will help calm that down, right? Because the person is not able to get married. So the ability is very important. And ability is not just financial, but ability can also be, as one of the things I mentioned earlier, is even learning about marriage. And so from a Islamic point of view, it is my opinion, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, that a person who has not studied at least the basic fiqh of marriage and divorce should not get married. Because we would tell a person in any other aspect of their life, if you're going to go into something, you need to understand what your king teaches you about it. Just like if a person is going to start a business and you don't understand the basic Islamic laws and rules of transactions, calm down, man, like relax. Because you can fall into something which is haram. Not only fall into something which is haram, which is you know, horrible, but in addition to that, you can fall into something that is actually detrimental to your life. A person doesn't understand the Islamic you know, morals and the Islamic guidelines for transaction could end up harming their business. Right? They don't understand what is halal and not halal and so on and so forth. They can end up doing something that will be harmful for their business. Right? Any other, even Islam. You may not have studied, you know, in depth a book on the stuff of prayer, but at some point somebody taught you the stuff of praying, making wudu. Somebody taught you how to make wudu. Right? We don't jump into it just not knowing what we're doing. So that basic knowledge. And then add to that, we have subhanAllah the knowledge of relationships. How do relationships work? And yes, there's a you know, some psychology involved there, other knowledge and information that goes into that. I personally believe that is vital for relationships. Because life is messy, life is complicated. And that is why even kind of like even young couples, I'm a big proponent for premarital counseling. And I know so like people don't like to hear that, especially people who have already decided that they want to get married. And I can't tell you the amount of times somebody comes to me and they're like, "Can you do my nikah?" First of all, I don't do it. Like I don't like it. Usually say no, right? Unless like I owe them a favor or something. But in the off chance that I would say yes to somebody, my one condition is premarital counseling. Like I'm not doing your nikah, I'm not doing your nikah speech or your wedding speech or whatever until like you got premarital counseling with somebody that I at least know or recognize. Because my stats are not good, I'm telling you. Like the nikah that I performed, how they turned out, they're Allah protected. They're Allah protected. I'm trying to raise my numbers up, right? I did a nikah, I think that's worked out well. And one of the things that is important to that'll help those stats, those figures, is premarital counseling. But I can't tell you the amount of times that someone says, you might get after oh my God, I'm like, listen, premarital counseling, they're like, no, we're good. I'm like, how do you know you're marrying the right person? How do you know that no, this is the right person? Like, I know. You know. And so kind of like even in a few cases where I've seen premarital counseling being performed, if people have already decided, there's like this gloss that comes over their eyes. Right? So it's like the counselor talk about real problems, and there's like this gloss of the eyes, and okay, we're good. Why? Because they believe, I'm like a soulmate. What can go wrong? Right? Love conquers all. None of this. You heard that before? Love conquers all. That is not true. Love conquers all for about 6 months to about a year. After that, love stops conquering all. After that, life becomes real. And you have to deal with, not this romanticized idea of what a relationship is supposed to be, not this idea of this person that you have in your mind, this image that a person has created. It's the reality of who this person is. Right? So, premarital counseling, understanding what goes into the relationship, all of this comes under the person who is able to get married. So, for me, at a time like this, one of the questions that are asked, who should I marry? It's very important that a person is prepared and ready and able to get married. A big part of that, as I alluded to earlier, is knowing yourself and understanding yourself. If you don't understand yourself, you're not going to understand the type of person that you should be marrying. A lot of times we're not honest with ourselves about who we are, right? So a person says, okay, so we know we're supposed to find a pious spouse, right? We may have this image in our mind of like, I'm good, I'm pious, right? I got it. And so I need somebody who's at that level. Well, number one, that may not be as true as we like to think it is, right? Like, I need somebody who prays 5 times a day. Like, I need somebody who prays 5 times a day, will has a Quran memorized, da 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 da. But is that the person who's right for you? Because I'm sorry, homie, you're not there in your faith right now. Right? So now it's going to be very difficult. If you marry somebody at that level, their faith or their Islamic knowledge, it's going to be extremely challenging in this relationship. Right? So, and a lot of times we think we know we want something, but if we were to be honest with ourselves, that may not be the type of person that we want for ourselves, that we need, or that is right for us at this moment. A lot of times we have this idea of, so and so, if they were just like this, then they would be fine for me. And this is I'm gonna marry the person, not the person, but the person that they're going to become, right? Where, found this girl or found this guy and we're in love, and people obviously in the Muslim space, people won't say that, they'll just say like, this is the right person. They're not gonna say like, I'm in love, this is my soulmate, we're gonna be dancing through fields and things like, no one's gonna say that, right? But you're like, no, this is the right person, because now perhaps there's some feelings attached, people got connected and they became attached to one another and they developed feelings, and now everything was getting glossed over and you feel like this is the right person. And at that point, a person may justify things that they know aren't right for them based off of, this person can become the type of person that I need. Classic example of that is a sister who marries a brother who doesn't pray 5 times a day. But it's important to her that her spouse, that her husband prays 5 times a day. And she's like, inshallah, I'm going to be a good influence on him, and he's going to pray. Inshallah, he'll start praying. And I always tell people, if you're marrying the person who's in front of you right now, if this person stays like this for the rest of your life, would you be okay with that? Could they change? Absolutely. Could they become a better Muslim, a better whatever? Absolutely. But that is never a guarantee. And in most cases, and this is, yes, part of this is anecdotal for me, but I think a lot of young couples, in most cases, that does not work out. When we marry somebody for who we want them to be, or who they could be, or the potential that they have. And likewise, when it happens to us, when someone marries us for someone that we could be, even if we make those promises. But a lot of times it's the brother himself, it's like, yeah, once I get married, I'll do this. right? Especially if it's the right girl, maybe it's a muhajjaba, and, she has certain requirements in her deen and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, yeah, I'm not really that practicing or that religious or whatever it may be. But for you, right, I see myself becoming a better man, right? But that only lasts, once again, for a certain amount of time until the reality of relationship set in, and then a person's like, this is not who I am, or I'm not ready to make these changes in my life. And that can be very detrimental. So, once again, understanding who we are, and understanding, if we understand who we are, what our life is about, what we need in life, then we'll be better equipped to find the right person. If you were to ask someone, that's how a lot of these marriage surveys or marriage questionnaires, or you also need 100 questions to ask your potential spouse. You also need, it's made its way around. I'm looking for it, right? But like 100 questions, and a lot of those questions, subhanAllah, like, oh, what is your biggest weakness, right? What person answered that question completely honestly? Who says like, yeah, I have an anger problem and I throw stuff when I get angry? Ain't nobody says that. You know what people say? People say, my biggest weakness, I care too much. Right? That's one of those like humble brags. Like you guys, one of the things you see at a job interview, right? You don't look at a job interview, that's what those questions feel like if you like a job interview. Right? Like when you're not gonna be like, yeah, look, I don't even really want this job. I need the money, right? I'm not interested. Like this is just like a stepping stone to a better job. It's like you put on your best face. Likewise, these marriage questions, that's what it is, right? Like in that stage of the relationship, especially when there's feelings attached already, a person's gonna put on, it's gonna look amazing. There's nothing that a person will say that's gonna be like, maybe I shouldn't marry this person. Right? So, but that is why you have a lot of the question of, how do I know, or how do I approach someone? And one of the things that I've struggled with, one of the questions I really struggled to answer, and I'm sure some of you came here today hoping I would address this to answer this question of like, which is like kind of, I know the title of this lecture, like what's the halal way to find something, right? Look, I don't know how to answer that question, right? But I do know that sliding into somebody's DMs is not, forget halal, put halal, which is very important by the way, the most important thing, but just to put that aside for a second. Is that effective? No, it's not effective. Because once again, it becomes about those 100 questions, right? We're looking at a person's online persona, their profile, the images that they've created for themselves online, right? You're not looking at who this person really is. The way to really see for marrying the right person is to try to really understand and get to know this person, and 100 questions is not going to do it. Or 100 questions is not going to be the right method to do it. And if you take a look at, I've thought about this a lot, subhanAllah. In the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how did people get married? If you think about it, how did people get married? Were there 100 questions? No. Were people swiping? Obviously not. So what happened? Well, what happened was communities were quite small and quite tight-knit communities. So generally when someone proposed, like when a guy proposed to a girl, this wasn't someone that, they've only seen the way they look and they heard her speak a couple times, and that's it. They knew who this person is, they know their family, they know their history, they might have seen this person grow up because they're living in a very small, tight-knit community. And by the way, as a side point, even with that, divorces still happen, right? The stigma against divorce is really problematic. Divorce at times is a necessity, and that's why our deen allows for it, right? Divorces are going to happen. It's natural, it's normal. Two people sometimes it don't work out. That's a side point. But let's just say, what was the Muslim community like back then in the time of the Prophet, which is probably the best generation. Well, once again, when somebody wanted to marry someone else, they knew who they were marrying for the most part, right? They knew like this person's history, what they've been through, they know their parents, they know their life, they know their most likely their character and so on and so forth. That is why we have the hadith of the Prophet that if someone comes to you and you are pleased with their deen and their character, and and you don't marry this person, then there will be a lot of corruption in the land, right? Why? Because that's all a person, for them, that covered everything back then, right? Deen, how do we judge deen now? Based off of appearances, based off of how many photos they have of themselves praying. Like, to me, that's a red flag. It's like, yo, man, praying to God and praying to, like, be online, right? And I always think to myself, subhanAllah, like, who's taking these pictures when somebody's praying? Like, is there a tripod? Is it like your homegirl or your homeboy? You're like, yo, just stand there and wait until I look really, really like concentrating when I look like really pious. And then I'll make dua, like take the picture. And then take it again 3 times to get the lighting right? How do you know? Right? And that's a very real challenge. Oh, and the character. How do we know people's character? Based off those questions, based off of our conversations in the DMs, that's not the reality of who this person is. Once again, it's like a job interview, the person puts on their best face. They put on the best. So how do we get to a point of subhanAllah? And I know you're expecting me to answer this question. I can't. But I think this is where we need to start, what we need to start thinking about. How do we get to a point where we truly understand the type of this person that I'm married? If we know someone who knows the person, generally that works out quite well. And that's why, I sometimes you don't like those people in the community that like know all the girls and all the guys and try to masturbate or whatever. It's a little creepy, right? It's a little fake, and I think so too. But sometimes an auntie may know way more about someone than you, even if you slid into that person's DMs and you talked to them for 2 years. And I can tell you, subhanAllah, once again, I have experience of talking to people who have been in that situation. They're like, I was talking to this girl for 2 years. And we talked and talked and talked and talked and talked. And then they got married. And then they're like, but that's not who I thought. Or I didn't expect this to happen, or I didn't expect that to happen. And this happens over and over and over and over again. And so for me, I think one of the ways that we need to, like, the solution for this is how do we get people to know and understand, who is available and what type of person they are and what their life goals are. And then how do we move from there? And then the reality of the situation, the reason why this is very difficult for me to answer in a general format, because we're all different. There may be a brother, for example, whose mom is like, she knows everybody in the community. And she knows the auntie who knows the auntie who knows everybody, whatever. And then his mom comes to him and says, here's like 10 sisters. And then they're all good girls or whatever, maybe even another family, That's very different than someone, for example, who's a revert or a convert. Someone accepts Islam, even if they accepted Islam a while ago, they don't have the same support as someone who is, from whatever culture, and they know the aunties and whatever. It's very different. They don't have that same backing from their family. Their family might not be Muslim. And so not only do they have to deal with being a convert and then the whole, that whole issue of, prejudice that comes with that, right? But then on top of that, not having the proper resources. And so for those 2 people, I would actually, if the case spoke to me, I would give them very different advice, and I talk to them very differently. I say, look, how do we help this person versus how do we help that person? Likewise, a person's abilities may be different. As I said, there are brothers that I've met, and I'm like, yeah, you're ready to get married, inshallah. I mean, I can't guarantee your marriage is going to be amazing, perfect, because it's never easy. But I think in terms of your deen, and in terms of like your life goals and what you want, and even though like this may be a person who doesn't even have a job yet, but they're in a place in their life where they know what they want, they have a plan, and they're setting from their deen and all that. They're like, okay, this person's on a path. Versus someone, there are brothers that I've met, and I apologize to give more brother examples, I know more brother examples, but there's brothers that I've met that are they're done with college, they have an amazing job, they're loaded, got enough money, they're chilling it. But I'm like, dude, you should not get married in this state. Right? Because you're not ready to get married. So those are some of the things that I wanted to talk about. And I try to make this talk not as like messy as it ended up being. I wanted to some solid advice for you all. But this is one of those topics that is very, very difficult to speak about. Because each and every one of you that I'm looking at right now, like your life is very different. And like I said, your life experiences and the resources that you may have and like what you're looking for may be very different. So I find, even though this is one of the topics that people love to speak about, the marriage and marriage advice and like how to get married and what type of person to look for, I'm not a big advocate for giving general advice to people when our real lives are quite very nuanced, right? And very messy. Just like, by the way, when it comes to a person's deen, we're talking about marriage today, but in terms of a person's deen, when somebody comes to me and asks a question about how do I get my, I don't know, brother to start praying? Or how do I get so and so to like care more about Islam? I'm like, I don't know. Because I don't know your brother, I don't know what they're like, I don't know what their challenges are, I don't know what they're going through. I don't know. I don't know what to say to you. Right? If you want just some feel good advice, like tell them to fear Allah, tell them to recite the Quran or reflect on the Quran. That's all good stuff and it's great. But this person may be dealing with who knows what issue that is a barrier for them to commit themselves to their faith. For some people, it may be a person who just, they don't really see the importance, or they don't feel that they have a need for God. They don't have a need for deen, for faith. And they feel self-sufficient. They're like, what does Islam do for me? They don't find value in Islam. That's a different challenge versus somebody who, you know what? They face some trauma through what they see as Islam. Right? There could be someone, subhanAllah, who was real situation, real life, someone who is abused by a Quran teacher, right? And because of that trauma and because of that abuse that they've been through, their disconnect from Islam is very different than the other person. And that is why, once again, I think counseling, and I know people don't like that word, but I think this generation here, I'm just going to say our, I'm not going to talk about it. Our generation is getting better at it, right? Where we are more willing to seek advice and counseling. I often say to the Prophet, counsel people. He didn't just throw rulings at people, halal, haram, so on and so forth. He would spend time with companions and talk them through their problems. Because there is a difference between what is the ruling of this, like is this halal or haram or makruh or whatever it may be, versus how do I get myself to do what Allah has commanded me to do. That's two very different things. Right? And a person may be dealing with a sin, like you can tell, like this is a sin, this is haram. Okay, you understand the ruling. But a person is struggling with a sin because of certain things that they are going through, certain challenges that they are facing. Like that young companion who came to the Prophet ﷺ and he told the Messenger of Allah, make zina halal for you. Can you imagine someone going to the Prophet of Allah ﷺ and saying, make it halal for you to have sex outside of marriage? Imagine someone goes to like the local imam and says that. Maybe like put it out of the masjid. Like, how dare you? He's ducking that. Like, who are you? Like, how dare you ask such a vile question? But the Prophet didn't say this young companion. He counseled him through this issue. He had him understand why actually zina is so problematic. The implications for not only him, but his family and community and society. Like, why is zina problematic? This is how the Prophet was. And I'll end with one more example. The man who came and peed in the masjid, y'all know how to do? Yeah, it's better when man rolls up into the masjid, walks in the masjid, comes into the masjid, and urinates in the masjid. In one narration, he goes to the corner, but another narration doesn't mention it. It seems that he urinated like right there. And this is not any masjid. This is not like our local masjid, which we like really upset about our local masjid and our this stuff. This is the second holiest place in the world. This is the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The second holiest place for us as Muslims in the world. And he came and he urinated in the masjid. What did the Prophet say? The Prophet get upset at him. He said, this is haram for Allah, and so on and so forth. And actually some of the companions were getting upset. they're about to get up and like give him a beat down or something. Like, how dare you come urinate in the masjid? The Prophet said, "Da'u," like leave him. And this is the character of the Prophet said. We talk about counseling people, having patience with people, having compassion with people who are maybe distant from Islam or have misunderstanding when it comes to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it doesn't even allow him to finish. And the Prophet explained to him in a very gentle way what is happening here. And this hadith, this narration, this incident is amazing because we see Prophet counseling in like in real time. Because the Prophet tells this person that he says, these places, these are the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are places of salah, of prayer, and dhikr, right? These are not places for najazah, for impurity. Now, you would think, like, why would he say that? Like, isn't that obvious? Isn't it obvious? Well, it may be obvious to us. It may have been obvious to even someone who's reading this hadith. It may be obvious to them, but to the Bedouin man, it wasn't obvious. The Bedouin man actually, the reason why, and people think about it, like, why did he come urinate in the mission? Did he hate Islam? Did he hate the Prophet? Was he trying to trigger the companions? Like, what's going on here? None of the above. The reason is because this Bedouin man, his lifestyle is, they would say that we don't have different places for different things. They would say we're nomadic people. We just travel. We're traveling. We need to sleep. We sleep. We need to use the bathroom. Use the bathroom wherever we are. So they don't have places for najat, and places for this, and places for this, and places to cook your food in, and then places of spiritual significance, places of worship. So this Bedouin man didn't understand that. He didn't understand that this is the place that is special for worship. And so when the Prophet is going to explain this to him, then it clicked for him. And he actually made dua for the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So I'll end with that, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does that. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.